Pete Hegseth. He was named last night as Trump's pick for Department of Defense. Now, Pete Hegseth is a great guy, I can tell you. Pete Hegseth named as Department of Defense Secretary by Donald Trump. He is a terrific guy. I have known him a lot of years. He was and is a player on Fox News. He hosts the weekend show there. I used to have him on quite regularly on my evening show, on my daytime show too, but he used to come on quite regularly on the evening show. He's just a really smart guy. He's got a great background. He went to Harvard undergrad, Princeton undergrad, back when that meant something, and to Harvard for his master's in policy at the Kennedy School. Again, back when it meant something. He has been in Afghanistan. He has been in Iraq. He has 2 bronze medals. So in other words, this is somebody who is a veteran himself, ran a veterans group after the fact, before he became a Fox News contributor. He used to come on TV and people were like, oh my gosh, like he's kind of good. He speaks well, he's articulate, he's smart, he looks great. And before you knew it, he became a regular and then eventually went on to host that weekend morning show. So fascinating. He's outside the box, right? How do I say that? He's totally outside the box. Like when I first heard it, I'm going to be perfectly honest, and I love Pete. In fact, I'm going to say something about Pete. You know, when I left Fox, people get weird, you know, when things like that happen. And he was one of the few people to reach out to me. I mean, the president, by the way, too, which I will always credit him with. The next morning, was calling my house. But Pete reached out right away, and we have stayed in contact since. And he's just a really stand-up guy. He has a large family, lots of kids. He's passionate about this country and about patriotism. And, you know, the left's piling all over him as fast as they can. But I want to share a clip of him talking, and you can see a little window into his intellect and what I think he could do for Department of Defense, which we'll discuss.
The Pentagon is in the book, the exact amount of years, but in the past X number of years, 10, 12, 15, the Pentagon has a perfect record in all of its war games against China. We lose every time inside the Pentagon war games. We know what our real capability. You see, we didn't even get to this part of the war on warriors. I mean, the military-industrial complex, the way we procure weapon systems. You know, we're always, the way our system works, the way our bureaucratic system works, where the speed of weapons procurement works, we're always a decade behind in fighting the last war. Whereas China, we have, you know, what did Rumsfeld say? You go to the war to the army you have. We have the army. China's building an army specifically dedicated to defeating the United States of America. That is their strategic outset. Take hypersonic missiles. So if our whole power projection platform is aircraft carriers and the ability to project power that way strategically around the globe, and yeah, we have a nuclear triad and all of that, but a big part of it. And if, you know, 15 hypersonic missiles can take out our 10 aircraft carriers in the first 20 minutes of a conflict, what does that look like?
Yeah.
I mean, and when if they've already got us by the balls economically, which you pointed out very well, with our grid, culturally, there's plenty of elite capture going on around the globe. I mean, and then microchips and everything. Why do they want Taiwan? They want to corner the market completely on the technological future. We can't even drive our cars without the stuff we need out of China these days. I mean, they have a full spectrum, long-term view of not just regional but global domination, and we have our heads up our asses.
Yeah.
And that.
Yeah. You know, he means what he says, and he's not wrong. And if you look back at who has historically been our Department of Defense secretary, what you see actually is a lot of people that worked for corporations. I went and did a background on this. A lot of people worked at places like Raytheon or Boeing. I mean, Pat Shanahan was from Boeing. Mark Esper was at Raytheon. Lloyd Austin, he was a general, so he came from the military. I mean, he's no great shakes, right? He's the guy that went MIA for how many days? You know, Ash Carter was a physicist. He had kind of been a government appointee for a long time. Leon Panetta, of course, was another bureaucrat. And Gates as well, Department of Defense and CIA director, another bureaucrat who brought that sort of bureaucrat experience. And now's a guy who is on television now, but he's actually been in the trenches with the troops, and he's got a pretty definitive view on things. And, he's enough with the woke media. It's one of the things I like about Pete. Here he is. CNN thinks this is a bad thing, what I'm about to show you. I say, haha, thank you.
I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated. We've all served with women, and they're great. It just, our institutions don't have to incentivize that in places where not traditionally, over human history, men in those positions are more capable.
Okay, you're not supposed to say that, right? But Pete is willing to say things that maybe sometimes others aren't willing to say. And there's authenticity in that. And don't we need a little authenticity these days? So Pete Hegseth, now nominated for Department of Defense. Now, in full disclosure, I was surprised. So some friends were watching Laura's show in real time on Fox. And they sent me a text of the picture, the screen grab, showing Pete being announced. I'm like, oh, that's a joke, right? I really didn't see that happening. It was not a joke. She was completely serious. There we go, Trish. And I just hadn't thought of it before. I really had not thought of it before. He's certainly qualified. It's called thinking outside the box. I like that I hadn't thought of it before. And I'm hearing, we're going to hear more people that maybe Trish Regan and nobody else has thought of before. And I think there's something to that. There's a certain power in that. Now, everybody's on it, oh my gosh, he's a Fox host, blah, 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 sits at the end of the couch, this, that, and the other. I mean, Joy Reid is just apoplectic. She can't believe this. She's hysterically laughing at it all. Let's listen.
The former and future president is moving quickly to fill the clown car and round out his cabinet before he changes his mind and fires them all. Moments ago, Trump announced that he has selected Fox weekend morning show host, you can't make this up, Pete Hegseth, to serve as Secretary of Defense, because why not?
Yeah. Well, your network's about to be sold, Joy. I hate to break the news. So I'd say that Pete's in better shape than you right about now. I mean, not to be mean or anything, but it is about to get sold. More on that in a second. But listen, you can say, oh, he's just a host on television, whatever. The guy has been in battle. The guy has gotten 2 bronze medals for being in battle. The guy was the CEO of a veterans organization. And by the way, the guy, after he left Princeton undergrad, was working at Bear Stearns as an equity analyst. Listen, I worked myself as an equity analyst actually a fixed income analyst, if we want to get really specific, at Goldman Sachs. And these jobs are not easy to get. He's smart. He's worked hard over the last couple of decades. You got this Elizabeth Warren out there tweeting up a storm. Oh my gosh, she's so angry at the idea that somehow Pete Hegseth could be our Department of Defense Secretary of Defense. I got to read this one to you because it's just sort of funny. I had to respond to it on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter, by the way, at Trish_Regan. But I got a kick out of this one because she's just kind of bitter. And it's really coming out. The bitterness is evident. Elizabeth Warren is really mad that somehow Donald Trump picked a Fox and Friends weekend co-host. She writes, I led the Senate military personnel panel. All 3 of my brothers served in uniform. I respect every one of our service members. Donald Trump's pick will make us less safe and must be rejected. So that is Elizabeth Warren on Pete Hegseth. I would just point out again, he went to Princeton, went to Harvard, Kennedy School, back when all that mattered. And he was a Wall Street capital markets analyst over at Bear. And importantly, perhaps most importantly, a 2 times bronze medal recipient for his service in our armed services in the Army. He went on to run a couple of veterans groups. And I would just say that, you know what, Pete Hegseth has done a heck of a lot more, Elizabeth Warren, in his 44 years of age, and you have done in your 75. And I know he's way better looking than you. But you know what? Like maybe maybe that'll actually inspire some people. You know, he's like the whole image, right? Could it inspire some young men to want to be in our armed services instead of, watching transgender TikTokers go on about how you should join the military because, maybe we had a free operation. Seriously, they had transgenders trying to recruit for the Biden administration on TikTok. I mean, it was outrageous for the Navy. I'm like, what's wrong with this world? You want a strong military and this is how you're going about it? Maybe you need a guy like Pete out there. Maybe you need somebody who kind of looks the part. And hopefully he surrounds himself with smart, seasoned people, but he's intelligent enough, bright enough to kind of buck the trend. And so I think this could be actually a huge, huge opportunity for the United States to maybe, dare I say, make the military cool again, right? Pete Hegseth with his wife and many kids and the tats, the whole thing, who definitely cuts a very different picture. Here he is. So this is Pete with the president. I want to show you one more. You can just see that this is going to be a whole different feel. This is him with his family. Again, let's make the military something that we want to do, that we want to be in, that people, respect. And I think there's a real shot of doing that. So again, Pete Hegseth getting this big opportunity. It's not something I would have necessarily thought of. Maybe Veterans Affairs would have crossed my mind, but this is what you call, ladies and gentlemen, thinking outside the box. And there's something really incredibly special about that.